Hello everybody. This week we're all about them brakes. Find out what's going on this episode of Throttle Grotto. Alright everybody, welcome back. So this week it's going to be all about brakes. I'm going to be working on brakes on the 75. Finally kind of getting back to that after being on vacation for a little bit and working on the Golf for a week or so. And I did last episode I did the windows on the Golf, and I did the front brakes on the 83 GTI. So today I'm going to bend up some new brake lines for the master cylinder to the front brakes on the 75, and hopefully I'm going to replace the master cylinder, which is completely blown, on the 83 GTI. So ideally I'd split this into two episodes, but the 83 is going to be hopefully getting wrapped up here soon. I'm still waiting for a set of injectors to show up, and then I have brakes and cooling system to finish up. So that's going to be today's episode. Stay tuned. Alright, so this is the brake line for the passenger side of the Rabbit. It appears to be in good shape. I don't see anything severely wrong with it, other than the fact that it's 40 some years old. So it's a good idea just to go through and replace the hard lines on these cars. Now, one of the things that's happened in the past couple years is auto parts stores have started stocking replacement lines that match the bubble flare that goes onto these cars. So instead of having to buy a flaring tool and a roll of hose, you can go down to the auto parts store and buy a complete replacement line in different lengths. So this one I got to do the passenger side is a 50-inch line. And obviously you're going to take some measurements before you go, but if you have the old line and it's still in decent shape, or at least good enough to make a template from, you can take some measurements off of it and get yourself a replacement line and do this yourself really easily. This is super easy stuff to do in your own garage. So like I went down to Napa and I got there's the part number if you can read it, 8135493, and it's a 51-inch. So it says 3/16, but on the tag it also says European. And if you compare the fittings are the same. It's just a little bit, maybe another thread deeper, but it has the correct bubble flare on the end. So I know that these are going to work. So I just need to bend this up, and then I'll have a replacement brake line that I can put right into the car. Really simple. If you're going to do a tight bend, make sure that you get the fitting past it before you do the tight bend. So basically I'm just going to go along, make all my bends to match what we have here, and then I'll have a replacement line. So I'm using a socket. If you have access to a really nice bending tool, you can do that. Otherwise, just make sure you have something round to bend the line around so you don't pinch it off. Now that I've got this bent up, when I put it in place, it seems like it actually might be a little bit short, so I may have measured incorrectly, but we'll see. Okay, so I just spent a significant amount of time cleaning up these calipers. They don't look awesome, but I'm fairly confident that these calipers are going to be okay, but I'm not 100% sure. I've had them stored for several years with this cut off piece of brake line with a screw in the end of it, and the caliper actually had fluid in it when I retreated or compressed the piston, so I'm counting on them still being good, but ultimately I may end up having to buy a remanufactured or new set of calipers. So I'm going to put them on the car, and I'll go through and bleed the brakes and all that kind of stuff and see if they work, and if I don't get good performance out of these calipers, I'll replace them. But I bought these several years ago off of a good running car, so I'm kind of hoping they're still good, so because it'll save me a little bit of money. And you know, if they last a couple of years, then I can replace them in a couple of years. But right now, I'd really like to get this car on the road. So right now, the only thing I'm missing from this side is the spring clip. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in here with the low light, but there's a spring clip that goes between the rubber hose and the metal hose, and I seem to be missing both of those. So I'm going to have to wait to connect the brake line, but as you can see, it was long enough. So if you get the 51-inch, it'll do the passenger side, but it'll be pretty tight. If you want a little extra room to be fancy, you're going to have to go a little bit longer. So I'm going to do up the other side, and then we'll get to work on the 83. Alright, so some of you more astute observers will notice that I initially put the wrong brake rotor on the passenger side. So I fixed my mistake before you go all commenting on there and let me know that I forgot to do it. I didn't forget to do it. I just grabbed the wrong brake rotor, so now the pattern's facing the right way. So cleaned up the driver's side, put it all back together. Now I'm just waiting on those two little spring clips, and I have to get some more brake line. One thing to keep in mind if you're going to go replace your brake lines at like the auto parts store, like I was mentioning, is the longer ones that go to the back are going to be more difficult to get, and you're probably going to have to order those. I was able to find one at an import store. I got to find another one. Still got to get in there and see if the one that I bought is going to be long enough. I think it'll reach the driver's side, but maybe not the passenger side. So just wanted to give you guys that info. I'm going to head out and replace the master cylinder on the 83, and I'm going to replace a bunch of hoses, and that should be about all the time I have for today. Okay, so I've put the plugs that came with the master cylinder into the holes that aren't going to be used, and I just matched it up to the old one. So all that's left to do is I'm going to hose this out because this has got really nasty stuff in it, and I'm going to put the master cylinder back in. You may notice that I had two lines before. Well, this is to replace the driver's side line, because the driver's side line on here got fudged up when I went to take it off. So I only have one line, but to replace on here, and then I can hook it back up to here, and then I'll bench bleed it. So the way I'll bench bleed it is I will loosen all the fittings and just fill the master cylinder with fresh brake fluid and just let it drain out all the fittings, and that will give me it'll make sure that the master cylinder is full. You can also do it on the workbench, but it's a lot messier to put it in if you do that. So I like to put it in I like to put it in dry. I like to put the master cylinder in the car dry, and then bleed it, or fill it, let it drain out, and then continue the bleed process on the rest of the brakes while it's all put in the car. So that's what's next. Alright everybody, so I ended up running out of daylight, and I ended up with a couple of suggestions about talking about the interchange and what we're using on the 75 Rabbit for brake parts. And so I made a couple notes here on my phone to kind of talk about it. One of the things that I've forgotten to talk about is the difference between US and the rest of the world and how we size stuff. So originally, the 75 Rabbit came with 9.4 inch front brakes, which were 238 millimeters for the rest of the world. They came with a solid front rotor. The GTI originally came with, well, the US spec GTI came with the same size, 9.4 or 238 front rotors, but they were vented. So I don't know if the like the 76 GTI and then like the 79 GTI that came to Canada, I don't know what size brakes those got offhand. But so in the US, the first platform, I guess you could say, is the 16 valve Scirocco. Was the first one to get on the on the A1 platform, was the first one to get a large brake here in the US, and we got that in 87 and 88 only. So those went to a 256 front rotor for 10.1 inch front brakes. And then the only other 4-lug car that we got here that had bigger brakes than that was the Corrado G60, which was 1989, and that came with a 280 millimeter front rotor for an 11 inch front brake. So there are guys running the 11 inch Corrado stuff on the fronts of these cars, and it works. For me, having a 10.1 opens up a lot of variety for wheels. So that's where those parts are coming from. So the Audi 4000 85 to 87 had the correct, shared basically the caliper and the carrier with the 16 valve Scirocco. So the calipers that I have are actually from an 85 Audi 4000. So as far as rear brakes go, we only got the one size in rear brakes among the Mark I platforms and the Mark II platforms. So the 16 valve Scirocco shared the same size rear rotor with like the Golf 16 valve, the Jetta 16 valve. I believe the Corrado 16V came with, or sorry, Corrado G60 only. We didn't get Corrado 16V in the US. they all shared the same size rear disc. So as far as drums go, 180 was the standard size, which is like a 7-inch, and then like 7.8 was the 200 millimeter. So that was the larger drum that came from the pickup, and then that was also used on the Mark III Golf Jetta platform. They use those for the rear drums. So 180 on drums all the way through Mark IIs, and then 200 after that. So they put them on the pickups initially because obviously you're carrying a big load with a pickup and you want a little bit better brakes in the back. So you could upgrade if you want to stick with drums, upgrade to the 200s from like either a Mark III or a pickup, and then or the rear discs, you can get them from any 4-lug car like a Passat, Corrado, Jetta 16 valve, Golf 16 valve. Both of those are going to be Mark II chassis, and I think those are all the cars that came. Golf 3. I think some of the Golf 3s that we got here also had rear discs, but they were like the 8-valve GTIs. The Golf 3 had like a weird batch of cars that we got here. Like we got a GTI with a 2-liter 4-cylinder and sport seats and rear discs, 10.1-inch to 56 fronts. But then like the 90, man, I'm just like going into the weeds here. But then like so like the 89 16-valve and 8-valve came with rear discs, but the 90 came with rear drums, and then in 91 they went back to rear discs. So I don't know. Parts bins and cost cutting and trying to save money and all that stuff. So anyway, I went way down into the rabbit hole about brakes and so, like where they come from and what cars they came on. So basically, I'm going to jump over to master cylinders because I've talked already too much about that. So master cylinders, 17 millimeter. It's funny, like the master cylinders are measured in millimeters, but the brakes were measured in inches in the U.S. So master cylinders, non-power was 17 millimeter. Power brakes were 18 millimeter for the A1 platform, and then 16-valve Scirocco got the 22 millimeter master cylinder, and then like the Golf Mark II, Mark III got the larger upgraded 22 millimeter master cylinder as well. So I'm using a master cylinder and brake booster from a Mark III, which has the larger 22 millimeter, same as a 16-valve Scirocco, just a lot easier to find, and the booster is a little bit narrower, so it actually tucks in closer to the firewall, gives me more room in the engine compartment. The downside of that is I have to modify the push rod. The push rod on a Rabbit is long and straight and has a threaded rod at the end to interface with the brake pedal, and on the Mark III it's a completely different interface from the brake pedal, and the push rod has like a little ball and socket on the end of it. So I'll show you guys how I'm going to do that when I get to it. Should be in a couple of episodes. So later this week I'll be working on getting the cooling system, like just going to replace the hoses on the cooling system on the 83 GTI. I really need to get that car finished up and back to the owner because I have another car on the way, and it's going to be our rallycross car for the season. I'm pretty excited about it. So there's going to be a lot of work to do on that car, and I'll talk more about why I'm doing that when I pick up the car next week. But so in about a week from when this episode airs, you should get to meet the new rallycross car that we're going to be campaigning this season. So hopefully we're going to hit 5 or 6 rallycross events this season, and we're going to dual drive it. So me and my wife will both get runs in the car, so it's going to get extra beat up. But it's a I'm not going to say anything about it. You're just going to have to wait and see. So that's all I'm going to do for tonight. But I just wanted to touch base because some people have been asking me about like first of all, I don't understand, like it takes me too long in my head to do the math conversions. So I'll try to be better about that on future videos when I'm talking about like stuff that crosses over, like, you know, a 256 millimeter brake versus a 10.1. And I'll try to put annotations in the videos on stuff like that too, just so more of a global aspect. You know, you have to think globally on some of this stuff. We'll finish up the episode this week with putting new cooling hoses on the 83 GTI and getting the cooling system wrapped up. So once I get the new injectors, I can actually run the car, let it idle, and bleed the cooling system and take it for a test drive, which should be interesting because the car hasn't moved under its own power in over 10 years. So we'll film that too. So that's all for tonight. All right, everybody, welcome back. So today it is very late in the day. It's already getting dark outside, and unfortunately my day off was consumed by things that I had to do that did not involve cars. So I was able to at least take some time and pick this up, which is the brake line I needed for the driver's side of the 75, and I had to drive about 45 minutes to an hour out of my way to pick up these, which is a pair of spring clips from a newer car, but they should work for the front brakes on the 75 because I lost the clips that I had. So that is how I'm going to finish up the rest of my day, is getting both of these front brakes done. So at least I have lines run up to the master cylinder, and I can start with getting lines to the back of the car when I have a little more time. So I'm going to get to it. So I was talking earlier about being able to put a bend in a brake line with just about anything round. I'm going to put the first bend in it because it has to come down from the brake master cylinder and make a loop to come up into that little bracket that mounts to the body on the driver's side. I have my brand new brake line right here, and I'm just going to use the handle of my compressor because it's round and just about the right diameter. For the other one, I used my handle on my recycling bin outside. So this one will work, and I don't have to go outside to do it. So there we've got a really nice bend in there. We've got the loop so that it can come back up to the master cylinder. And then one other thing to remember is always leave yourself a little bit of slack. Don't make these things super tight because these cars do flex, and if you have it really tight, it's going to pull on it in ways that would be, let's say, unfavorable. So let's get this put in. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of things that went on in that last little clip if you did watch it. One is I moved this brake line here, this one here, from the front to the back. And I installed these items here, which are proportioning valves for the rear brakes for the disc brake conversion. So they just reduce the amount of flow that goes to the rear brakes so they don't lock up all the time. So you want to have, ideally you want to have a front and rear on the same circuit. So the front half of this master cylinder, if you look at it, there's a feed here and a feed down here that put fluid into those chambers, and you can't really see it this way. Oh, maybe we can. Let's see. Well, alright, so that doesn't come out very easily. But if you look on most master cylinders, there's a front and a back chamber. And they do that so if there's a leak, at least only one of it leaks. Ideally, you still have two brakes. And ideally, you want two of those brakes to be like one front and one rear. But you can do it however you want. But I'm doing this to kind of the way the manufacturer intended it, and that's a front and a rear on each circuit. So that is all I have to do now is get the back end of this car way up in the air so they can get underneath it and figure out how much brake line I actually have to work with. The one that I picked up I think is 1400 millimeters, which will probably be long enough to do the driver's side, but I don't know. So that is going to be the next step for the brake system on this car, and don't know if I will get it done in time for the end of this episode. So, and as I predicted, I ran out of time for the end of this episode. So I'm going to wrap it up with I got the front brakes done on the Rabbit. I've got the proportioning valves installed. I still need to get the back end of the car way up into the air so I can slide underneath it and finish up installing the rear brake lines. And then the brake system on the 75 will be done. The brake system on the 83 is done. All I got to do, the only thing I haven't done is plug the cleaned reservoir bottle into the top of the master cylinder. So I plugged it with a couple of plastic plugs to keep moisture out of it while I was doing. I haven't gotten back to the 83 yet, but hopefully this week I will get back to that. So that is the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all the support that you guys have been throwing me through the comments and likes and all that stuff. So keep it up, and I will see you guys next week with a new episode. Thanks for watching. Till next time, get out there and work on something.